Hello everybody, welcome to Bobonomics. I'm Bobo, and today I just wanted to do a quick side deck tier list for, April 2023 pretty much. This is post-Ycs. This is mainly just my opinion and kind of my thought process on how I choose what I side. So, these are going to be our tiers. Like, I think pretty much always side, just strong picks. Depends is going to be pretty dependent on what deck you're playing, your strategy, or playstyle, and just not good and garbage. So I'm going to try and go pretty quick because, there's a lot of these, but, um, you know, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so this is going to be a mix of going first and second cards. We'll start with Anti-Spell. I do think Anti-Spell is strong. I don't know if it's a side 100%. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with strong just because Evenly is so popular and most of the decks right now kind of can't play under their own Anti-Spell. So I'm going to go with strong because it's pretty strong regardless. Hits all the top decks like, Cashier and Branded Despia. Sprite it's not as good as, but obviously still hits a lot of things, and it hits post-side cards as well. A Pointer of the Red Lotus I think is strong, especially because people are still playing, Kaijus, Evenlies, Lava Golems, whatever, the Kurikara card, and so this is good to hit those before they can, actually get that setup that lets them be useful. The book card, so Book of Lunar Eclipse, I think has fallen off a lot in popularity. But I still think it's a strong pick. Sure, it gets hit by Ash Blossom, but it's a blowout versus Cashier if they don't have like Forbidden Lance or something. I'm gonna go ahead and put Book of Moon in the same tier. I do think depending on your deck, like if you already get hit by Ash Blossom a lot, then it really depends how you approach it. Like if you're Branded Despia, you want them to Ash your Branded Fusion, so this would probably be good Ash bait. But if you're just a deck that Ash will never be put in versus you after game one, then I guess Lunar Eclipse is probably good, but those decks are kind of rare. If you can't wipe a board easily, then regular Book of Moon's probably better. But yeah, these two are pretty interchangeable, but obviously some strategies are going to prefer one over the other. I think I play Book of Moon a little more just because it works for me going first. If I can like dodge something like targeting something to pop, just random example, you can dodge a Dogmatic Punishment with this just as easily as this, but this is going to make me, flip my whole field down while this can be more targeted going first. And then going second, obviously this is better, but if it's just like a Rise Heart Pass, then Book of Moon gets the job done as well. I'm going to go with next option, Bestials in general is what this is going to represent, and I'm going to go with Depends. If you benefit from level 6s, or if you have light and dark cards as your worst matchups, I think this is going to be good. This will be good versus Branded Despia. Mainly, I don't see it being that good versus Cashier or Sprite, but obviously versus other rogue picks like Drytron, this is gonna be good. So if you're like a Dragon deck, I'd say definitely play it, but for most decks, Bestials are not gonna be, ideal, I guess, unless Branded Despia is a really terrible matchup for you. Change of Heart, I'm gonna go with Depends as well. If you can link things off really easily, if you can use that body to like maximum potential, sure, go ahead and play it. If you aren't going to be losing to anti-spell, like let's say, maybe if you're Sprite, this might be, better than in Cashier or something. So yeah, I'm going to go with Depends on that. But if your deck is good with Change of Heart, then I think it's a strong pick, obviously. Chaos Hunter, I think it's probably garbage just because it plays into Thrust. Cashier can take it as a level 7 with talents. There's just too many wrong things with it. It takes a card to discard. It misses timing, which usually isn't relevant because this is probably for Cashier, but this doesn't hurt most other decks that hard. So I'm gonna go with garbage on this, but it's a close one. I see the argument for it. Like if Cashier is your only bad matchup, but I'll just go with garbage for now. Contact C, I think it's gonna. That's tough. I think it is strong. It is strong, and it's not fully deck dependent. Like it's a pretty generic card, but it's just got to be versus the right matchups. Cashier, Branded Despia mainly, and you have to time it well and all that. But it is a strong card for sure, and it doesn't play into Thrust. It doesn't put the body on your side of the field. So I think overall pretty good. Cosmics, I'm gonna go with not good, just because there's already a lot of anti-banish cards. Imperial Iron Wall. I guess some people playing Lancey and Chaos Hunter, but that's pretty rare. But I would take a Harpies or an Evenly or a Twin Twisters over this, just because there's not that many back row decks, and the back row decks that you are playing against, like obviously Cosmic will always be good versus them, or fine at least. But I'd rather just play, a whole wipe like Harpies, Evenly. Sanctum and Scythe aren't a thing anymore, really. So there's not as many benefits to using this and on those types of cards to get them banished. And you don't really need to be hitting things in draw phase. If you're scared of anti-spell, you can play Twin Twisters or Evenly Matched, which is more popular. So I'm going to go with not good right now just because there's better options for back row hate. Dark Hole, I'm going to go with... Dang, it's a tough one. I personally, I can see Dark Hole being good. Maybe it depends, just because, I don't know. If you're a Sky Striker deck, maybe you want more spells. I'm trying to think of the decks that this is really optimal in. Like Kashtira, this could help clear your Nib token if you Nibiru with someone. But it's definitely good versus decks like Kashtira, but I think there's so many better options. I might lean towards not good. I'm going to go with not good on this, although I see an argument for it depending on the deck. Dark Ruler. I like how I kind of have strong and just side 100%. Dark Ruler is going to be on the end of strong. It's solid versus Kashtira. Pretty much takes care of their board. Branded Despia takes care of half their board. Sprite takes care of a lot of their board. So yeah, I think Dark Ruler is good. The only thing is it just plays so hard into anti-spell and things like that. D-Barrier, I'm going to go side 100%. Obviously, people have realized that this isn't that good versus Kashtira, but it still wipes Branded Despia. It's still decent versus Sprite. It's decent versus Runic. So I think this is a fair side 100% card. And Anti-Spell, Pointer, and Books are close to the side 100%. Droll, I think Droll is strong and has gotten stronger. I'm personally not playing it just because I'm still kind of scared of playing under Shifter, and I don't think this completely ends the turn of Kashtira or Branded Despia or Sprite or Labyrinth or Traptrix or whatever you're scared of. So, but still strong just because it's very good to pair at least with another interruption, and it'll shut down a part of any deck really. Econ, I think it depends. It's good in Kashtira main deck even, but not every deck can play this just because they can't afford to tribute, things like that. Eradicator, again, depends. It might even be not good just because, there's not many that great dark cards to tribute right now, and not every deck's going to get completely wiped by this. Call Spells versus Runic, it's pretty good. They'll still chain stuff. But yeah, I'm going to go with, it's either not good or depends. Probably should just be not good. Let's go with, but there's no counterplay, so I'll say it depends. Really depends on the deck you're going against. Evenly, I think it's a easy 100%. Still very hard to counter. You don't really want to be playing Lancia just for this, or Imperial Iron Wall. If you're already putting that in versus Kashtira, that's fine. But again, that's dependent. This hurts a lot of the Kashtira's board, especially if they're just doing a Rise Heart and set 3 pass. That's still going to get good value. Branded Despia, it's always going to be good value and can cleanly out Mirror Jade often. Sprite, it's good versus them as well. You're just going to usually have to bait out one negate. And Churia Runic, pretty much bait at floor, but then you don't got to worry about Nat Beast unless that's the only thing they leave. So I think pretty good overall. Harpies, like I said, I think Harpies is better than Cosmic, but I think this will depend. If you're playing Thrust, this is a good card to search versus trap decks. This is good to just get a lot of value at once, but you have to keep in mind for decks like Traptrix, which is one of the more real trap decks in the format, they do have their Arachnocampa, which is the only real argument Cosmic gets better than Harpies, but most of the time Harpies is just way better, and it's searchable in very specific situations with Thrust or Harpy's Feather Storm if you're playing Flunderies or something like that. Kaijus, I think I'm going to go side 100%. They're definitely, at the very least, strong, but I think almost every deck can play Kaijus, so that's why I'll say 100%. They're just too generic, and they completely wipe Kashtira's board sometimes versus Branded Despia, Sprite, Runic, Natria Runic, you'll almost always get some value out of this. So Gamma, I think it is going to be It's up here for sure. It's not going to be side 100%. You can't afford the brick all the time. It's a little overrated versus like Branded Despia. It plays into Thrust and Talents. I'm going to say depends, honestly. If you can afford the brick, it's very good to play. And I do think it's great if your deck loses to Shifter. So I'm going to put it at the front of depends. Maybe with Magma right here. Yeah, I'll do that right here. So Gamma at the very high end of depends. Um, Yeah, because just not every deck can play this, obviously. Like, it'll conflict with levels, it'll clog up your field sometimes if you're like Kashtira. So you're not going to main deck this, but Kashtira can definitely side deck this. It's up there. It's definitely up there. Plays into a lot of things, but also is uniquely going to beat a lot of things. It's a close one. I'll go with depends, but it could be strong for sure. Again, this is my opinion, and it's kind of off on the fly picks, so I'm not putting an insane amount of thought into this, but I'm just trying to reason it out. Um, you know, live. Bell, I do think is actually good, but maybe I should just have like a straight up good section or something, but and not depends. But I do think it's worse than Bishul's in almost every single situation. It really depends on what deck you're playing. Only thing is that it has that versatility of hitting like a called by and stuff. But realistically, all the light and dark decks that you're scared of, like Branded Despia, whatever, Drytron potentially, Mathmech, Visuals are just as good versus them, if not better. So I'm gonna go with Bell right here. Depends if you get any synergy from it being a level 3 tuner, you know, like with Kashtira, you can normal summon it, go into floor first, things like that. But in general, Visuals are gonna be better because Bell's almost only for light and dark decks. Um, so yeah, that's my reasoning. I play Bell right now, but I think Visuals are a little better, but I'm just conflicted on, I think specifically Bell and like an Ash Blossom versus Branded Despia. If they're called buying your Ash, which is obviously is very rare, it's a one of, but just things like that is why I'll sometimes play Bell over Visuals. But yeah, like I said, I think it's kind of deck dependent. These two are almost interchangeable because they're really only to stop like gimmick locks or super factorial, things like that. And obviously Bell can hit like the Runic Fountain, which is why it's up here, but it's a close one. It's a close one. It kind of depends on what the rest of your side deck is, if you have enough hate for the other bad matchups. Mourner, I think, I'm not going to say side 100%. This is a main deck worthy card, really, but I do think it's strong. It's good in time, which isn't really that relevant. I think this is worse than like an impermanent Veiler, so I'll go with, uh, I'll go ahead and do Mourner up here. It's not really a side deck card, though, so I'm just going to say, like, these aren't necessarily for side decks, they're just for playing, but I will do Mourner up here just because it can play under Shifter. The times you would Imperm and Veiler pretty much would be on summon is just as effective. I'm going to not say side 100%, I'm going to say play 100% because I think that's kind of appropriate because you can play this and not necessarily side it. But yeah. Okay, so this guy right here, I forget, Ancient Organisms, whatever. It's a very good Floodgate versus Kashtira. Insane versus Branded Despia. I think it just depends on if you can play this yourself, like if this affects your deck. But it is probably better than all these other cards as far as like a blowout. But again, it'll lose to Tobacco Hay, it'll lose to Evenly, so that's something to consider as always. Imperm, I do think this is one of the best cards of the format. I'm going to go Evenly up here, actually. And D-Berry is the worst of these four. But Imperm is always going to be solid in my opinion. You know, works as a 6th card, doesn't play into pretty much anything. It's very low impact versus some matchups, I'll give it that, but just always being able to weaken it. I think a good player timing it well will always get some value out of it. So I think it's going to be up there for a while. Jinzo, I mean, this is pretty bad. Like almost every deck can beat over this. Even trap decks have like big monsters to beat over this. There's not that many trap decks to be playing, Jinzo in my opinion. Like Denko, which is not on here, Denko Sekka. Denko Sekka would be like depends. This is just not good, Takes a tribute, like it's hard to special summon out. I don't even know why this is on this list. I didn't make this list. I just picked it up off tier list maker, That's why it's titled YCS 250. Kurikara is definitely strong, but I don't know, it depends. I think we're gonna kind of ignore money here, although most of these decks or most of these cards are affordable, but I think Kurikara is just gonna depend on if you don't completely get blown out by you know, your opponent's first turn plays, like if you can afford to play board breakers, sure. Some decks really need hand traps because their board's too weak. Like for Virtual World, I'll rarely play board breakers just because if I'm building a board or if I need to build, like crack a board and then build follow-up, I want hand traps as interruptions. Like I can't really afford to have dead cards. But this is a pretty generic card, so it's hard to say depends. I'm just going to go with strong just because it's, but it's mainly for Kashtira. That is one thing. It's mainly for Kashtira, but it's generic enough to where I think you can just put strong. Lancia, it's a tough one. I want to say depends or not good, but I'm going to put it at the high end of not good because you really don't see people playing it that much. Its win percentage isn't that good. It's not going to shut down Kashtira, although it is good. I think it's a little underrated versus Kashtira, actually. It'll pretty much always hit pot cards and things like that. Almost every deck plays a pot card, but unless you pair this with something else, it's not going to be a silver bullet versus any deck. And, you know, that's kind of what you want your side deck to be. You want your side deck to skip a turn and usually hold its own. Again, some decks really benefit from Lancia. Like, you know, if you're pairing Gamma into Lancia, that's going to keep your Gamma on board for plays next turn, but I'm not going to say it depends just for that. I have played Lancia this format, and I probably will still play it just like 2, because I really lose hard to evenly. But I acknowledge that Lancia is probably not the best, and like half the time, if you can play Lancia, you can play Imperial Iron Wall. So for most decks, Lancia is not good, I'm going to say. Lava Golem, I'm not going to say play 100%. It is strong, but I mean, I'll say it depends. It's strong, but you know, it's not going to be a Rise Heart pass. It takes your normal summon pretty much, and if you get Gimmick Puppet locked, which I know is kind of falling out of relevancy, but that's not going to do anything versus that either. So let's just say it depends on, you know, if you can give up your normal summon, and if Kashtira starts doing full nib lock, or not nib lock, 5-zone lock, playing into nib, Lava Golem will get better. But I think Haiju's is just more generic, which is why I'll say play 100% there. Lightning Storm, I don't think it's very good right now, but it is probably better than Lancia, although it's close. Yeah, because people can easily play into, or play around this, like, there's not that many Link decks around. Most people are playing Xyz decks or Fusion decks right now, so they can put their monsters in defense, and then for back row, like, if you have back row hate, you'd rather just, you're already playing evenly or Harpies or something, and this is main phase only, you'll still get protected by a lot of the main phase protection, like the Trap Tricks, Arachnocamp or whatever, so. Although in theory this is versatile and good, half the time you're really only going to be wanting it for back row, and it's not going to work in the middle of a game. You know, you pretty much have to open it for it to be better than Harpies, which is one thing people forget to consider. But I might even put Cosmic above Lightning Storm, but I mean, these are all very, very close. Magic Deflector, it is good. I'm like, it's virtually anti-spell versus Kashtira. But it doesn't hit normal spells, which are the most powerful spells in the game. So I'm going to put it at, it really depends on what your worst matchup is, but I'm going to put it at the, I'll put, actually, Virus at the bottom, it depends. It's a blowout, but it's a little too dependent. Like, very few decks play this. Magic Deflector, I did test it just because I lose to evenly so hard, and that's what, you know, that's what my issue is pretty much, like, that's how I lose games. But Anti-Spell is just stronger, so Anti-Spell is insane. Versus Magic Deflector, a little less insane, plays around a little more stuff, but it's just a little too safe in my opinion. It's not really its time to shine yet. But the format could change just a little bit. Like there's one more like equip deck that replaced a deck that doesn't lose to this. You know, it's fine, but you know, versus Sprite, you know, they play all quick plays, but it's like 4 cards. And it's a turn skip. Versus this really can just halt a game, and then if you have a grind, like let's say a random card like Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, if you just keep getting value every turn, Anti-Spell is gonna win you the game and lock them out. Versus this is a turn skip, and even then it's not turn skip. You know, most decks can play spells that don't lose to this. Another normal spell, Mind Control. This is gonna be just like Change of Heart. I'll go with a little worse. It is worse than Change of Heart in my opinion, but it is at 3, I guess. But it has a little more restrictions. I'm gonna kind of combine all these 3. I'll say Econ. Actually, I think Econ's better just because it works going first. Like, to be in the side deck sometimes, you're gonna put your quote-unquote going second cards in going first, especially if it's like a bad matchup. So Doesn't need too much explanation. Again, just a target and take. Depends on if your deck benefits from that a lot. If you don't want to clog up your zones, all that. Nibiru, I do think is strong. Play 100%. It's almost there. Like I think almost every deck should be playing Nibiru, but it really depends how people play. Right now, people are going to be playing into Nib more, so I'm going to go with high end of strong. It's still not mandatory because it's not that great versus some decks, but it is. I mean, let's just go low end of play 100%. Obviously, play 100%. You're not going to be playing all 5 of these all the time, but I think it's something every deck pretty much will be considering. Shifter obviously depends, but it's pretty insane versus some decks. It's not that good though, so I'm actually just gonna put it right below Gamma. This can win you games outright, especially versus Rogue, but versus Sprite, Branded Despia, Kashtira, it's not really gonna be doing too much. And those are really the decks to beat. But versus Naturia Runic, this card's pretty crazy. Like, I've seen Shifter dropped, obviously, and I've had Shifter dropped on me, and I've still won the game. But this is almost a complete blowout. It's so strong, but obviously very few decks can play it. Judgment, good card. I don't see myself playing this too much, but with Evenly so like popular, it should be. I think it should be strong. Should be considered strong. But again, this is a strict going first card, pretty much. Compared to like a Pointer and Anti-Spell, is a tough one. I'm gonna go with Judgment just because it requires less setup. Although, yeah, in real life these things come up for like time, but Judgment's better, I guess, if you draw in like second turn versus a Pointer. Yeah, let's just go with Judgment up there. I think Anti-Spell's better though. Talents is definitely strong right now because people, they know that board breakers are the way to destroy Kashtira, kind of like evenly Kaijus and stuff, but everyone's playing Ash Blossom, and Ash Blossom is not even on here, I don't think, but is it? Yeah, no, that's funny. But yeah, Talents is good just because so many people are playing monsters. They're playing Mourner or Ash or something. But for side decking, it's really only. Well, no, it's pretty good versus everything. Let's be real. Especially good versus Kashtira, which is the best deck. Sphere mode, I'm just gonna go with like not good. Few people are playing sphere mode. It's the same thing as like depends. I'll do depends, but bottom of depends because it really requires your opponent to play into it hard. But when it does work, it works very well. So thrust, I'm gonna say strong, but I mean a lot of people aren't playing this just for budgetary constraints. But I'll say this is better than talents. Going second, it should be better because most of the time these are played alongside, and this just equals talents or other things if your opponent controls a monster. So let's go with thrust at the top of strong, but it depends. Kind of more depends on your budget, really. But I mean, almost all decks can play this. You just got to play normal spells and traps alongside it. With the Winter Cherries, that's kind of tough, but I'm gonna go with not good. I think this card's maybe a little slept on because if you lose to Arise Heart, Winter Cherries is the move, but very few decks can actually play this, except for like top decks. Fluon Rees and Cashier theoretically can play it, but it's just not that good. If you can play this, you're probably playing other stuff over it. So that's gonna be my quick list. I think Ash Blossom would be play 100%, obviously. There was another card that I said was missing earlier. I can't think of it right now. But oh yeah, Imperial Iron Wall potentially is gonna be depends, if you can play it. There's other cards, but in general, that is how I would rate the side deck cards of the format right now. Trying to think, there was some other things missing for sure. DD Crow, I guess, would be around where Bishul's and Bell are, probably right at the end of like behind Bell, because I don't think DD Crow's that bad, but it's a slightly more generic Bishul's without the body, so it's pretty objectively worse than the Bishul's. Like, I mean, yeah. I'm trying to think. I guess this is Crow's better than Bishul's versus like Naturia Runic, and that's it. But yeah, I think this is pretty accurate. The format is not changing that much. Kashtira and yeah, I guess Kashtira is definitely the best deck. Sprite, Naturia Runic, second, third maybe. Branded Despia probably fourth at this point. Traptrix maybe fifth. Labyrinth kind of fell off, but yeah, in general, this is what it's going to look like, the whole format. Let's go to Book of Moon better than Lunar Cliffs, but I'm just scanning through this. I think I'm pretty satisfied with this position. It's not going to be completely dead on if I look at it again in like half an hour, but I think this is pretty generally good. So hope you guys enjoyed this, learned some interactions potentially or reasoning, what's good versus other decks. Haven't made one of these like competitive tier list videos yet, so wanted to give it a try, see how people like it. Thank you for watching, and hope you guys have a great rest of the day or night. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Peace.